Disguised millionaire CEO's blind date exposed. Touching connection with single mom reveals his. Jake Carter felt the weight of his own mask as he stood in front of the mirror, a stranger staring back at him. The tailored black jacket felt constrictive, unlike his usual crisp designer suits. Tonight, he was leaving behind the world of flashy Manhattan boardrooms and the hollow platitudes exchanged during high-stakes meetings. He was a mere man in a small town, fleeing the expectations tied to his identity as a millionaire CEO. Would the woman awaiting him for the blind date see past the facade? Despite his reputation, he felt transparent. Such power had brought him insincere acquaintances and hollow friendships. Each interaction draped in a veneer of politeness, but void of any genuine affection. He longed for a real connection, yet the thought of revealing his true self, his wealth, his power terrified him. Today, Jake was just a man named Jack. At a small cafe in Green Valley, Sarah Thompson sat anxiously. She absent-mindedly toyed with her hair, reflecting on her struggles as a single mom and teacher. The bills piled up and the whispers of judgment she often faced conflicted with her fierce determination to create a better life for her children. Each day was a balancing act of hope and worry, and she hesitated at the thought of a blind date. Yet here she was, craving a momentary escape from the pressures of life. When Jake entered, relief washed over her, but it was quickly eclipsed by unease. He looked different, authentic, somehow. As they spoke, Jake found himself leaning in, eager to listen to Sarah's stories, her challenges as a teacher navigating a flawed system. The way her eyes lit up when talking about her kids astounded him, igniting a desire to share bits of himself. But doubt surfaced. Would she still feel the same if she knew he was a millionaire? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake felt the emotional pressure rising as the distance between their worlds threatened to draw them apart. With each shared laugh and vulnerable conversation, he wrestled with the urge to come clean about his life. How could he build a bridge across their differing realities without crumbling the trust they were forming? Then, a seemingly casual comment slipped from Sarah's lips, igniting an internal chaos within Jake. Some people just think money solves everything, she said lightly, her voice tinged with genuine frustration. Did she sense his wealth beneath the borrowed smile? The tension grew, wrapping around him like a tightening noose. He imagined confessing, but how would she react? What if she saw him as just another millionaire, an entitled fool out of touch with the everyday person? The atmosphere shifted, and Jake's heart raced. Could this spark ignite genuine connection, or would it snuff it out? As they settled into the edges of their conversations, he felt the chasm between them widen, a divide fueled by unspoken truths. The night was an emotional roller coaster, and in this moment of maximum anguish, Jake stood at the precipice of revelation. The truth loomed ahead, but how would it reshape their fragile bond? As Jake sat across from Sarah, the cafe's dim lighting flickered, casting shadows that mirrored the conflict raging inside him. Every laugh they shared felt like a fleeting moment, balancing precariously on the brink of honesty and deception. With each story she told, Jake couldn't help but compare her grounded perspective to his own gilded cage. What could a man like Jack, with a pristine fabricated life, possibly offer a woman like Sarah, who fought every day against the tide of her reality? Time slipped away as the conversation unfolded, but the weight of his secret grew heavier. Sarah's passion for teaching and her unwavering dedication to her children painted a vivid picture of sacrifice and love, contrasting starkly with the superficiality he often encountered in his world of wealth. He found himself captivated. She was revolutionary, challenging the norm in ways he had neglected. As he studied her expressions, he realized he was on the verge of something significant. There was a flicker of vulnerability igniting in him, a version of Jake he hadn't accessed in years. Doubt nagged at him like an insistent whisper. Would she really care for him, even if the truth would redefine everything between them? It was easy to assume she would somehow want something from him if she knew who he was. There, amidst the aroma of roasted coffee beans and the sound of clinking dishes, Jake pondered how to navigate the nerve-wracking precipice he stood upon. He contemplated the consequences of silence versus the chaos that might unfold from revealing his identity. A small table nearby snagged Jake's attention as a couple celebrated with cheers and laughter, their moment a stark contrast to his internal struggle. It was as though the world around him felt more present than himself. Should he remain Jack, the ordinary man, or abandon the disguise to become Jake, the CEO? He remembered his recent pledge to rediscover himself, to live authentically, yet here he was a man still burdened by the fear of exposure. Jake leaned in closer, trying to draw strength from Sarah's stories, absorbing her vitality. It felt almost cathartic, her accounts of classroom challenges and the profound impact she had on her students. They discussed the flawed education system, and he could sense her fierce belief that genuine change was possible. This was the catalyst he needed. Could he, in turn, translate her resolve into courage for himself? Just then, the moment cracked like thin glass. Sarah glanced directly into his eyes, her voice steady but piercing. "You know, I think sometimes we wear these masks to protect ourselves. But in doing so, we risk pushing away the very people who could understand us." Her words hit him with profound clarity, challenging the barriers he had built so fiercely around his heart. That statement hung in the air, ricocheting within him. Suddenly, Jake felt a surge of determination and urge to bridge the gap he had maintained and to show Sarah his true self. Yet the fear churned within him, whispering doubts of worthiness and acceptance. As he opened his mouth to finally introduce reality, the door of the cafe swung open, and a hurried figure stepped inside. Jake's focus snapped to the newcomer. It was his childhood friend, Mike, flanked by a group of business associates' faces he knew all too well from the high-stakes world he was trying to escape, and suddenly, the fragile moment with Sarah seemed to teeter more precariously than before. Would she see through the thin veil of deception? Would she realize that Jack was just Jake trying to escape, only to be pulled back once again? As he looked at Sarah, her gaze shifted curiously to see what had caught his attention. Jake's heart raced with urgency, uncertain of which path he would choose in the moments that followed. Jake felt his heart pound like a drum against a cage, and in that moment, the ambience of the cafe shifted around him. The chatter and laughter faded, leaving behind a deafening silence as the faces from his past entered his present like unwelcome ghosts. He sensed Sarah's puzzled expression, her curiosity mingling with concern. What was he hiding? He forced himself to make eye contact with Mike, who wore a confident smile more suited to a boardroom than a cafe. The very sight caused a whirlwind of emotions within him: shame, anger, and desperation for authenticity. Jake's thoughts raced. Should he deny his identity, just as he had done for so long? Or would this moment define him, perhaps even liberate him from the shackles of his double life? The tension in the air morphed into a palpable pressure, suffocating his resolve. Glancing back at Sarah, he saw a woman who radiated sincerity, whose effort to uplift her students resonated deeply with him. He could almost hear her unspoken encouragement echoing in his mind. "Show me who you really are." That alone was the spark he needed to push back against the current of his fears. Then, as if scripted by fate, he opened his mouth. "Sarah, what would it mean to you if someone were to lose their mask?" The question hung in the air, and she blinked, confusion melting into intrigue. "I think it would be liberating," she replied carefully. "But scary. Honesty can expose people in ways they might not be ready for." Her words solidified his resolve, igniting a fire within him that drowned out any echoes of doubt. With a deep breath, he grasped the edge of the table, his hands trembling slightly as he prepared to shed the layers of Jack. Before he could utter another word, Mike sauntered over with his entourage. "Jake. It's been ages. Who's your friend?" Jake's stomach dropped. He felt like a marionette caught in tangled strings, unable to maneuver. "This is Sarah." He turned to her, his eyes pleading for understanding. "She's just a friend?" Mike interrupted, eyebrows raised in disbelief. The judgment in his tone stung, reminding Jake of all the reasons he had masked himself: fear of judgment, rejection, and the expectation of conformity. More than that, Jake insisted, his voice gaining strength. Someone who inspires me to be better. Mike shot him a look that dripped with skepticism, as if trying to discern whether this was a facade Jake was crafting in real time. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. You should remember who you're dealing with, Jake. This isn't a fairy tale. Jake inhaled deeply, his pulse racing as he turned back to Sarah. Her eyes were wide, betraying a mix of encouragement and concern. I need to be honest, Sarah. I've been hiding behind a name and a reputation that doesn't define who I am. With every word that escaped his lips, the facade began to crumble, yet a dull ache of dread surged within him. Are we talking about your family name? Your business? Who are you really? She pressed, her curiosity creating a safe space for Jake to lay bare his reality. Just as he began to formulate his answer, the sharp sound of laughter echoed from his old friends, slicing through the warm moment he shared with Sarah. They were oblivious to the turmoil unfolding around them. It was a painful contrast, a reminder of the life he had left behind but also a challenge to confront the specter of his past. He had to make a choice: would he sink back into the safe disguise of Jack, or could he finally embrace his true self, knowing it might cost him everything? Jake hesitated, caught between the worlds he inhabited, each claiming a fraction of his heart. In a mere breath, everything could change, and the truth stood like a precipice before him, one side promising self-acceptance, while the other loomed with looming consequences. Sarah, he began, mentally steeling himself for the storm but realizing that the moment was all but slipping away with every heartbeat. The door swung open again, drawing his attention, and the feeling of impending revelation hung thick in the air. He knew the answer. Awaited in the depths of honesty just as much as it hid in the shadows of his past. But would he have the courage to step into the light? As the last echo of laughter faded, Jake felt the weight of intention pressing down on him. Time seemed to stretch, elongating his doubts. Should he descend into the comforting malaise of the man he once was, Jack, where expectations dictated his every move? Or should he gamble on a truth that burned in his chest, waiting to be unleashed? The faces of his past danced before him again. They were not just memories, they represented a part of him that he had long available but also a part he had come to resent. Jake narrowed his focus on Sarah, who was watching him intently. In her gaze, he found a flicker of something he hadn't encountered in years: a chance for redemption. Sarah, he said, his voice steadying, I have been living a lie. My name, my job, they were never who I am. They were who everyone else wanted me to be. Each word was a weight lifted, a reveal of the fractured pieces of his identity. Her brow furrowed slightly, a gesture of understanding. Then who are you really, Jake? A question like that demanded reckoning. He was no longer just a corporate figurehead, playing a part in a scripted life. He was a man navigating the tumultuous waters of authenticity. I'm not just a millionaire CEO, he confessed, glancing at the table. I have dreams that extend beyond boardrooms and financial reports. I wanted to be an artist, a writer, to express myself rather than build a facade. As he spoke, the tremors of vulnerability crept into his voice, and he could feel them igniting a spark within. Sarah listened, her eyes softening with understanding. That she remained present with him amidst the chaos of his past felt like a lifeline. Jake continued, but I thought loyalty to my family and our legacy came at the cost of my own happiness. I built my world on expectations that never felt right. There was a heaviness in the air as he dared to state the truth he had buried for so long, each sentence further loosening the grip of his carefully constructed identity. Just then, Mike returned to the table, his presence like a shadow creeping back into the light. Jake felt his resolve waver. What is going on here? Mike's tone was accusatory. It reignited the fear Jake had felt earlier, but now, it propelled him to respond with newfound clarity. Mike, it's time you understood that I'm not playing the role you want me to play. I'm redefining everything. He caught a glimpse of something dangerous in Mike's expression, confusion mixed with something more sinister. The subtle challenge was evident, and it dared him to retreat. Instead, he leaned closer, the passion for authenticity igniting even further. This isn't about you or your expectations. It's about what I want, who I want to be. Jake turned back to Sarah, feeling the connection they had forged ripple through him. I want to explore what it means to be vulnerable and real, even if it scares me. Being true to yourself is worth it, Jake, she said softly, her reassurance flickering like a flame against a windstorm. In that brief moment of connection, the door to his past creaked open wider. The laughter still echoed distantly from Mike's crowd, which felt like a different world altogether, a world he was slowly releasing. But he couldn't ignore the weight of Mike's skepticism hanging heavily in the air. Jake knew that as he released his truth, he was inviting scrutiny not just from Mike, but from everyone who had ever known him. This declaration could catalyze a collision, unraveling relationships he had fought to maintain. Even if it costs me everything? He muttered, the question hanging uneasily between them. Sometimes, honesty can feel like losing everything, but it also offers the possibility of gaining something far more valuable, freedom. The prospect of embracing freedom was intoxicating, yet it left a bitter aftertaste of fear and unpredictability. With the buzzing crowd offering a stark reminder of whom he was breaking away from, he inhaled deeply and opened up his heart with raw, tender honesty. I am Jake, not Jack. Today, I learn who I am. The admission sent electricity crackling through the space, a shifting of energy that promised change. But with the identity he had claimed came the inevitable consequence, facing Mike and the grip he still had on Jake's life. Jake braced himself, the door of possibility now wide open, but the shadow of confrontation loomed closer. Would he be able to stand firm against the pull of his past? The moment stretched as he awaited Mike's response, knowing it would either anchor him in his past or thrust him into an uncertain but exhilarating future. In that charged moment, Jake took a breath, grounding himself amidst the swirl of conflicting emotions. Mike's brow furrowed deeper, his posture tightening as if preparing for an impending confrontation. What do you mean, you learn who you are? Mike shot back, almost incredulously. Jake recognized the challenge in his friend's eyes, a competition to maintain the status quo versus the storm of change threatening to upend their carefully designed facade. I mean, I want more than what you've planned for me, Jake replied, his own voice steadier now. He could feel the rhythm of his heartbeat echoing in his ears. I'm tired of living someone else's vision. I want to write my own story. The words hung in the air, their weight palpable. Mike's gaze shifted back and forth, as if wrestling with the implications of Jake's declaration. And what does that even look like? You think you can just throw away your prospects, your legacy? You'll end up like a cliché, some broken dreamer. You're not that kid anymore, Jake. The edge in Mike's voice pierced through Jake's bravado, planting doubts as fear slithered back in. But beneath that fear pulsed a resoluteness. He had lived under the weight of others' expectations for far too long. Maybe I was never the kid you thought I was. Maybe that's the problem. Jake's heart raced, not solely from the confrontation, but from the realization that he was challenging not just Mike, but every external voice that had dictated the course of his life. Steeling himself, he leaned forward. If I don't take the chance to discover what my life could be beyond this pressure, I'll end up regretting it for the rest of my life. There are brave choices, and there are stupid ones. This? Mike gestured dismissively. You'll just look foolish. A chill crept along Jake's spine. His perception of foolishness had shifted, it no longer meant pursuing the path of genuineness. I refuse to hide behind a mask anymore. I choose honesty, even when it's hard, even when it's scary. Mike's expression morphed, an amalgam of disappointment and frustration evident in his features. So, you're willing to throw everything away, a successful career, stability, security, all for a fantasy? Sarah has already led you astray. This isn't who you are. Jake felt the accusation like a breath of cold air. It was an assault that stemmed from the fear of losing who he had been, but it also ignited a simmering resolve. Sarcasm, the armor he had donned for years, was useless here. You don't know what I'm capable of. I don't need your approval to forge my own path. The tension hung heavily between them, charged and electric. Jake felt Sarah's eyes on him, grounding him amid the storm. Her unwavering presence lit a spark of something profound, the realization that true partnership stems from the acceptance of authenticity over accolades. Look around, Mike. He motioned towards their surroundings, the laughter echoing from the crowd, the glimmer of chance sparkling like stars in a dark sky. This is the life I want. Not just success but fulfillment. With that, Jake pivoted away from Mike, the snare of his old life loosening. He caught Sarah's eye, searching for encouragement, and saw the pride blooming there. It was a subtle shift, a recognition of alignment with values he had too long suppressed. Let us embrace this transition together, Jake said to her, emboldened now. I want to explore the creative parts of myself that have been silenced. I'll support your journey, Jake, Sarah replied with sincerity, her voice wrapping around him with warmth. Jake turned back to Mike, every fiber of his being now hieroglyphs of purpose. You can't dictate my reality anymore. I'm stepping into the unknown on my own terms. The challenge in Mike's eyes dimmed slightly, the confrontation pivoting into a realm of misunderstanding. There was uncertainty in the air, but beneath it thrummed a vital pulse of potential. Jake had gripped the reins of his own story. As he left the conversation hanging in the air, Jake felt exhilarated and terrified. What new heights would he reach? Would he stumble in his venture? The mystery was intoxicating, a stark contrast to the suffocating certainty of the life he had led. Jake could sense change looming on the horizon. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and entirely thrilling. He had begun to carve a path into his future. The thought struck him just before he took his next step. Was he ready to face the repercussions of this newfound self? How would Mike react when the revelation of Jake's passion collided with the cold judgments of the past? The picture of that confrontation danced in his mind like an unpredictable storm. Jake stepped into the night, the crisp air washing over him, cleansing him of the heaviness that lingered from his confrontation with Mike. Each breath felt like a step further away from the shadows, illuminating the path he had decided to explore. Uncertainty entwined with excitement as he glanced over at Sarah. Are you ready to take that leap? She asked, her voice a soothing balm against the pulse of doubt that still threatened to creep in. He met her gaze, steady and sure. More than ever. Just let me catch my breath. As they walked, the world around them bustled with energy. Laughter rang out from a nearby cafe where warm lights spilled onto the sidewalk. Every face in the crowd seemed vibrant and alive, embracing the freedom that Jake craved. You know, Sarah began, her tone light but serious, this isn't just about leaving your comfort zone. It's about discovering who you are in this world. Jake contemplated her words, a sense of gravity settling over the thrill. Finding himself meant dismantling the expectations that had shaped him, but how would he even begin? He had been so defined by what Mike said, what his family expected, that he hardly knew how to identify his own desires. How do I even start? He asked, a note of vulnerability slipping through. By trying, she suggested, glancing up toward the stars that punctured the night sky. Why not take some classes? Explore art, writing, anything that excites you. Allow yourself to fail and succeed without anyone defining what that means. Classes? A flicker of enthusiasm ignited in Jake. I've never thought about taking anything like that. Because you've never given yourself permission to, Sarah replied gently. You're not defined by your job, Jake. Go seek inspiration instead. Jake's mind danced with possibilities, glimmering like the stars above. All of it felt intoxicatingly close and uncomfortably far at the same time. Could he create something, anything, that resonated with how he felt inside? It was exhilarating to think about. I need to write, he realized aloud, the words surprising him. A flood of ideas rushed through him, colliding like waves against a rocky shore. I haven't let myself do that since high school. Then write, she encouraged, her enthusiasm infectious. Start a blog or journal. Just get it out, whatever it is. The notion sent fresh vigor coursing within him. It wasn't just about deciding to pursue a creative endeavor, it was a commitment to be unapologetically Jake, to embrace that identity he had long buried. What if this spark fanned into a flame? Can I ask you something? He said, glancing over at her, his heart thumping. Why are you so supportive of this? You must know how others might react. Sarah smiled, clearly aware of the struggle of navigating societal judgment. Because I believe in you, Jake. And I trust that this journey will lead you to be truly happy. For too long, you've played a role that doesn't fit who you are. I want to see you thrive. With her words, all of Jake's fears danced at the shore, daring him to step into their depths. Would he flounder, or could he emerge transformed? A moment of tranquility enveloped Jake as he grappled with the implications of her faith in him. It was as if he was gazing into a mirror that reflected not the person he had been, but the man he had the potential to become. Okay. I'll start writing, he nodded resolutely. It may be terrible at first, but at least it'll be honest. Exactly, she replied, an exuberant energy infusing the air. It's about being true to yourself. Feeling buoyed by exhilaration, Jake couldn't suppress a grin. The journey to discovering his passions had begun. Yet, a gnawing question started to surface, one that shadowed every step of this new endeavor. What if Mike was right? What if this leap plunged him into chaos instead of freedom? As they strolled onwards, that doubt simmered beneath the surface. Jake could almost feel Mike's critical judgment wrapping around him like chains, waiting for his next move. Would he stumble, or could he rise to this challenge, carving a new identity? From the ashes of the old? A flicker of fear ignited anew as Jake considered the precarious precipice he stood upon. But perhaps that was where true growth began, on the edge of uncertainty, where risk and reward danced together in the dark. The night felt alive with possibility, but the shadows loomed larger with every step. Would he have the strength to unveil not just his passions, but also the parts of himself that had long been left undiscovered? The tension in his chest tightened, propelling him forward into the unknown, awareness swirling around him like a tempest, demanding to be faced. What revelations awaited him in the pages yet unwritten? Awakening the following morning, Jake experienced a tumult of emotions swirling within him: excitement, uncertainty, dread. Everything converged into an exhilarating hope that felt both foreign and liberating. The sun filtered through his apartment window, illuminating his desk, the blank page in front of him tauntingly empty, yet filled with potential. Determined to start anew, he set aside any lingering fear of judgment, pushing past the shadows that loomed from his encounter with Mike. Reaching for a pen, he let it flow across the paper, allowing his thoughts to take shape through the ink. What emerged surprised him. Fragments of dreams, fears, and fragmented memories tumbled onto the page. He hadn't just written, he was unearthing himself. With each line he penned, clarity began to replace confusion. The challenge loomed as a series of revelations, hidden aspirations uncovered like buried treasure. His writing was cathartic, yet he felt acutely aware of the bravado necessary to share it with an audience. What if it resonated? What if it didn't? A palpable conflict brewing within him. The thought of Mike stung anew, sharp and insistent. How could Jake dare to share his authentic self when Mike's voice echoed in his mind, questioning every decision? But there it was, the new identity he endeavored to cultivate hinged on this pursuit, bearing the weight of his truth with honesty. Maybe it's time to test my voice, he muttered aloud, realizing he had to move from solitary reflection to communal vulnerability. He thought of the blog Sarah had suggested. It stood as more than merely a platform to write, it symbolized connection, a bridge from his inner world to that of others. But what would I say? The question sat heavy on him like some looming specter. Would people perceive him as pretentious? A misguided fool? Anxiety sent tendrils of doubt curling in his chest. Yet, beneath the writhing uncertainty, he felt a flicker of resolve. He wanted to impact others' lives, to show them they were not alone in their struggles. Taking a deep breath, he began drafting the first post, a raw expose of his internal battles. He connected moments from his past to the present, painting a picture of growth intertwined with vulnerability. Raw, unpolished honesty wrapped around the words like a warm embrace, a departure from his carefully curated facade. As he began forming sentences, Jake's pulse quickened. Each word carried him deeper into his psyche. He confronted his fears head-on. The villainous encounters with Mike served as a backdrop, making the piece rich with emotional texture, revealing realms he had won or lost in pursuit of fulfillment. With each keystroke, Jake ventured further down the path Sarah had illuminated. She'd been right. What mattered most was authenticity. As his fingers danced across the keyboard, something within him lightened. The entrapment felt less suffocating, yielding space for fresh hopes and regrets alike. The moment of inspiration crescendoed, a looming decision hanging overhead like a ripe fruit, just waiting to fall. Would he dare to share this piece? The recollections he spilled onto the page reminded him of his own heart, daring him to expose its intricacies. "All right, let us do this," Jake whispered to himself, a newfound defiance igniting in his spirit. Yet as he took one final glance at the half-finished masterpiece on the screen, a haunting question reverberated in his mind: what if vulnerability, once revealed, didn't lead to acceptance but to scorn? With adrenaline coursing through his veins, he felt an ominous tension build, botched with anticipation. Would he regret tossing himself into the open, risking everything? The stakes had never felt so high, and he teetered on the edge of a precipice, unprepared yet emboldened by the chance to become who he truly was. As he hovered on the brink of pressing publish, he felt acutely aware that this choice wouldn't merely impact his own story but could reverberate through the lives of others, those who might find solace in his truth. Would this leap lead to freedom? Or would it plunge him into chaos? His heart raced as he poised his finger over the key, a single moment that held the potential to shatter the confines of his old self or confirm his deepest fears. Would he dive headfirst into this daring journey, or would he hesitate and retreat into the safety of silence? The illuminated screen stared back, its blankness offering no guarantees. An unsettling wave washed over him as he contemplated his next move. The journey toward revealing his true self had just begun, and Jake couldn't help but wonder, would this writing be the start of his new identity, or merely a reminder of the shadows he longed to escape? The silence in Jake's apartment was punctuated only by the rhythmic click of his breathing, each inhalation peppered with hesitation and doubt. As his finger lingered over the mouse, he grappled with the enormity of what lay ahead. This wasn't merely a post, it was a map of his identity, a declaration of his existence, and the prospect was overwhelmingly daunting. With a deep breath, he pressed publish. The moment was electric, infused with defiance yet wrapped in apprehension. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. But then came a cascade of emotions, a cocktail of pride and trepidation. He had taken a leap, and now the abyss awaited him. Instead of allowing himself the luxury of satisfaction, Jake resisted the urge to check for likes or comments. He turned away from the screen, forcing himself to confront the rapid heartbeat pulsating through his chest. It wasn't enough to simply post his writing, it was essential to become comfortable with the possibility of critique and rejection. Standing still felt like being shackled. A surge of energy propelled him to lace up his shoes and rush out the door. The sunlight hit him like a warm embrace as he stepped outside. For the first time in a long while, a sense of determination guided him. He entered a new chapter, one where he would actively seek out his voice in the world. He decided to visit the cafe where he used to write. The very air buzzed with creativity and ambition, a landscape thriving on the dreams of others. Here, he believed, was a haven that would nourish his resolve. Staking a claim at his usual corner, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, Jake's mind ignited with ideas for future posts. Each sip invigorated him, and among the scattered thoughts, a question loomed large: what more could he share that would connect with others equally navigating their own darkness? His thoughts mingled with the sounds around him, forming a tapestry of inspiration. Relatable experiences translated into potential blog topics danced invitingly in his mind. Heartbreaks, growth, friendships, there was a universe of subjects waiting to be illuminated through his lens. He could articulate the reality that everyone wore a mask, the fear of judgment creeping silently beneath surface smiles. But one thought lodged itself firmly: what would he write about next? The immediate follow-up piece felt like a heavy load. He hadn't just unmasked himself, he now bore the responsibility of maintaining authenticity. Coasting on the tide of vulnerability was risky, sustaining it was an act of discipline, one he was painfully aware of. Diving into reflection, Jake considered Mike again. He hadn't thought about him for a while, but now the familiar sharpness returned. When would he confront him, particularly if Mike ever stumbled across the blog? There was no avoiding the confrontation looming on the horizon, a reckoning that he still wasn't prepared for. The barista brought him back to reality with a smile and a gentle, "Here's your refill." Thanking her, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a nearby mirror. The remnants of his past still hung around him like a shadow. He was still Jake, but something within him had shifted. He could no longer afford to be defined solely by past mistakes. With renewed conviction, he took out his notebook and wrote the words, "The next blog will center on confronting our past." The idea ignited a flame of anticipation, propelling him through the uncertainty. He would own his narrative, confront his fears, share the hard-hitting truths that clung to him. It was a challenge layered with risk but also with possibility. As he scribbled fervently, he glanced at his phone during a brief pause. A notification blinked. The blog had garnered its first comment. "Your words resonate." "Thank you." A wave of satisfaction washed over him. This was just the beginning. Would he have the courage to allow his story of confrontation to unfold publicly? Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. With a quick glance, he read another comment, this one shadowed with criticism. "Stop seeking pity." The bite of it came through him, pulling the rug from under his feet. Doubt crawled back into his mind, and he wrestled with the gnawing disbelief. Was it too late to retreat, or would he stand firm in his truth? The vibrant world around him became a blur as his thoughts spiraled. The journey towards revealing his essence wasn't just about finding his voice. It was also about facing judgment, overcoming fear, and learning to embrace vulnerability despite the stakes. How could he emerge stronger when every step forward felt like a dance with rejection? Would he continue reversing his steps back into isolation, or would he press forward, risking further wounds to carve out a new existence? Jake's heart anchored in a newfound determination despite the tempest. The next blog post would not be easy, and he was aware now that acceptance would not always be a guarantee. Yet, he felt ready to dig deeper, reach further, and confront whatever came his way. Would he rise, or would he fall, haunted by that critical voice? The weight of the question hung heavy as he closed his notebook, the ink barely dried, caught between hope and fear, bravely peering into the unknown. The cafe was alive, but Jake felt lost in his swirling thoughts. The comment, the one that pierced through his newfound fortitude, echoed in his head, transforming the once invigorating atmosphere into a confining space. The scent of coffee was now suffocating, amplified by the lingering weight of judgment. He could feel the barista glancing at him from behind the counter, her expression shifting from warm hospitality to mild concern as she noticed his furrowed brow. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the stifling doubt. What if the critic was right? What if he was just a wounded soul seeking pity? The fear spiraled within him, threatening to anchor him back in the very isolation he had been so eager to escape. Over the past week, he dared to embrace vulnerability, yet with one scathing attack, the walls began to close in. Jake gripped his notebook tighter, his knuckles turning white as he sought clarity. He knew he had to confront this fear head-on. The thought raced through his mind: if he allowed the words of someone outside his reality to define his worth, he would never break free from the shackles of his past. He had stepped into the realm of authenticity, and now, there was no turning back. With the determination ignited by his internal conflict, he jotted down a reminder in the margins of his notes: the truth is not an invitation for pity, it's an invitation for understanding. This declaration felt like a shield, one he could wield against the incoming waves of negativity. He flipped through the pages of his notes, reading past thoughts that once felt significant and weighty. As his eyes danced over the messy ink blots and half-finished ideas, he found a breadcrumb leading back toward relevance. There was a connection forming in his mind, a way to emerge from the depths of pain and transform it into a collective understanding. What if he shared not just the pain, but also how it had shaped him? Not just the confrontation of his past, but also the power of resilience that had been birthed from it? The stirring in his gut prompted him to write again, this time with fervor. He crafted a framework for his next post, outlining his reflections, facing the shattering moments. Each bullet point represented a stage in his journey: vulnerability, despair, recognition, growth, and finally, connection. By inviting others into his narrative, he could dismantle the criticism piece by piece, reinforcing that vulnerability wasn't a pitfall but a stepping stone towards compassion. As he scribbled, the world outside seemed to awaken with him. Laughter from a nearby table resonated, a couple's playful banter broke through his anxious reverie. He allowed himself a small smile, poking a hole in the heaviness that had settled in. It was innate people connected through shared experiences. Perhaps, amidst exposing his tumult, he could create the same bridge. The flame he felt sparked anew. Yet, an unsettling thought rolled back in like a tide. This meant exposing parts of himself he had kept deeply guarded. Would those fragments be deemed worthy? The confrontation with Mike loomed larger in his mind, reminding him that not everyone in his life would appreciate or accept the authenticity he sought to embody. And then, it struck him, he would need to prepare for fallout. Opening up meant he was entrusting others with a narrative that could be twisted back against him. What if Mike caught wind of this post? How would that confrontation play out, especially if it clashed with his desire for reconciliation and truth? Jake shifted in his seat, feeling the weight of his choices. The story he crafted would be intertwined with his confrontation of Mike, an exploration that went beyond righting past wrongs. It would be an assertion of his new identity. Fueled by newfound clarity, he pushed his notebook away momentarily, gaze sweeping across the room. Small conversations proved his instincts right. People longed to feel connected, to know they weren't alone in their struggles. The unease of uncertainty still resided in him, but he understood now to fear judgment and critique was human, yet to let it paralyze him was a choice. He chuckled at how he had almost allowed one voice to extinguish his spark. Realizing he was ready to embrace whatever came from sharing his truth, Jake made a decision. Right then and there, he committed to reaching out and confronting Mike, understanding it may not go as he hoped. Life was about growth, after all, and sometimes, growth came from the most unpleasant encounters. With his heart racing for the challenge ahead, Jake opened his notebook once more, ready to draft the next chapter, not just about facing his past, but about engaging with it honestly, exposing layers of pain, healing, and ultimately, connection. As he finished his notes, he glanced once more at his phone. This time, he noticed a message. It was from an unexpected source, a friend who had been quietly supportive through his silence. Just wanted to say, I admire your courage. Keep sharing your truth. Jake's heart raced. Would he share this journey with those closest to him, or would he choose to remain in solitude, haunted by the specter of his fears? The decision hung in the air like a palpable tension, urging him toward a precipice he both craved and feared. Which path would he choose? The moment calling forth clarity masked another layer of uncertainty, preparing him for the profound confrontation looming closer than ever. The sun hung low in the sky, bathing Green Valley in warm hues as Jake sat by the cafe window. The comforting sounds of laughter and chatter echoed around him, yet the noise faded under the weight of his impending confrontation with Mike. The blog post he had crafted was undoubtedly cathartic, but it was merely the first initiative in a broader tapestry of change. Changes demanded confrontation, and today, the confrontation with his past awaited. He took a deep breath as he opened the door to the cafe, stepping out into the golden aura surrounding him. With each step, determination crystallized within. He had shed the facade of Jack long ago, now it was time to fully embrace Jake, the man he was meant to be, a man driven by his passions, and not dictated by expectations. There was power in owning one's truth, and he was ready to unravel it. Jake's heart raced. The narrative he hoped to craft with Mike would involve confronting the conflicting perspectives of who he was and who his friend thought he should be. After publishing his blog post, the ambiguity of Mike's influence loomed larger than ever. Would his friend embrace him or challenge his life choices? Arriving at their meeting place in the park, Jake's determination intensified. He surveyed the area before spotting Mike sitting on a bench, a tangle of emotions barely concealed beneath his calm exterior. The sight sent a jolt of anxiety through him, but beneath the apprehension lay steely resolve. This moment would not be about retreating to the shadows but stepping boldly into the light. Jake! Mike called out, breaking into a brief smile that faltered into concern. Glad you could make it. Thanks for agreeing to meet. Jake settled onto the bench across from him, acutely aware of the weight of the conversation that loomed ahead. For a moment, they exchanged pleasantries, casual inquiries threading through the air as Mike laughed. Yet, Jake's mind drifted, preparing to lay bare the truth that had pulsated through him in the wake of his vulnerabilities. Look, Mike, he began steadily, opting for directness, we need to talk. I published a blog post. Mike's expression turned serious, his eyebrows knitted together in trepidation. I saw, he replied cautiously. A lot of people followed suit and voiced their reactions. I just don't want you to get hurt, man. You're treading on dangerous ground. The implication of safety painted Mike's concern as patronizing, anger sparking within Jake. That's exactly what I want to discuss. I'm done letting fear control my narrative. If I cannot be honest about who I am or what I want to share, then I'll never grow. Fear is a part of growth, Jake, Mike countered, his voice tinged with exasperation. You're risking everything that has taken years to build. Which is precisely why I need to step out of my comfort zone. I have been so afraid of losing your approval that I forgot my own principles. Jake leaned forward, directing the frustration inward without losing his footing. I need to be authentic, even if it scares me. A critical silence enveloped them. Jake felt every heartbeat ricochet against the silence. Yet, an internal resolve rooted deeper. If there was anyone who had to confront the impact of his choices, it was Mike. You've never understood, have you? Jake continued, emboldened. I don't want to lead someone else's life anymore. My blog isn't seeking pity, it's a reflection of struggle, growth, and ultimately, connection. It's about finding my voice and rediscovering my truth. The heartbeat of silence stammered. Mike looked away momentarily, grappling with the raw impact of Jake's words. When he glanced back, the disagreement simmering beneath the surface felt exposed, tension in the air thick enough to be cut with a knife. It's not that I want to see you fail, Jake. I just think this is reckless and self-indulgent. The accusation hung heavy, igniting a flame of frustration within Jake. Isn't it reckless to live someone else's version of life because you're too afraid to confront their expectations? I won't remain a prisoner to that narrative. Jake's voice rang with resolve, each word easing the burden of years that had shackled him. I thought you were better than this, Mike shot back, hurt flashing across his expression. You think remaining cooped up in your mind and sharing your struggles is what people want? They want success, not your doubts. Jake tightened his grip on the bench. Maybe I'm choosing a different kind of success. The conversation faded into silence again, both men grappling with the tension of their perspectives. Yet, Jake's heart pounded with fierce clarity. It was no longer Mike's expectations weighing heavily on him, it was his self-identity that surged forth. I'm not looking for approval anymore. I'm creating space to thrive, Jake said, his voice toned with unshakable resilience. I hope one day you can understand that authentic growth is not found in illusions but in shared vulnerabilities. We all wrestle with ourselves, it's time to embrace our struggles, rather than hide behind them. Jake could see Mike's facade crack slightly, disbelief fading into something resembling contemplation. But what will people think? I'm done worrying about what people think. The moment I hit publish, I chose to be unapologetically me and I won't back down. The only people who matter are the ones who choose to support authenticity. Each syllable tumbled forth with newfound power, the conflict reconstituting from confrontation into an opportunity for understanding. Slowly, Mike's posture shifted, as if absorbing Jake's words with newfound clarity. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You're risking friendships, relationships exactly, Jake affirmed, which is why I'm ready to face whatever comes next. I want to own my narrative. This is my life, and I will write my own definition of success, on my own terms. Though the shadows of uncertainty lingered, Jake glanced steadily into Mike's eyes, an unwavering connection forming between them. No longer merely a struggle against expectations, this encounter shaped his resolve to step into authenticity, asserting the move to redefine his own story. Mike let out a slow breath, absorbing the gravity of this conversation. I guess it's a lot to digest. That's okay. It's my journey, and I'm inviting you to join me if you're willing, Jake said, finding warmth in vulnerability. As the tension subsided into a fragile acceptance, the future crackled with electric potential. The air felt lighter, the conversation transforming from conflict to opportunity, a bridge built on understanding. Finally, Jake exhaled, a feeling of deep contentment washing over him. He had stood up for his truth and surrendered his past to emerge anew. "Just know I'm here if you ever want to talk." "But Jake," Mike paused, his eyes searching, "don't lose sight of the connections you have. They matter too." Jake nodded, recognizing the possibility for renewed understanding to blossom between them. There, beside the flickering lights of the cafe, they parted ways, resolutely altered by the conversation. Within himself, Jake understood that his journey had only just begun. Steps toward authenticity marked the path of resilience ahead, grounded in courage, blossoming into a profound connection with his truest self. Jake strolled away, heart alight with newfound purpose. This moment represented the spark that would ignite his transformation. He knew there were more stories to tell, more connections to forge, and an ever-expanding canvas of life awaiting him. The journey toward authenticity wasn't merely a tale of struggle, it was the infused air of liberation, a crescendo of courage. Each word written, every connection made, propelled him forward with a sense of confidence and clarity, stitching together the fabric of awakening, a tapestry sparkling with purpose and unyielding determination for whatever lay ahead. If you felt the power of Jake's journey and want to embark on your own path to authenticity, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and help others discover transformations. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's journey, share your thoughts and experiences. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of authenticity and empowerment.